writing process. And it is a process that, in all honesty, it makes the difference between an A and a B paper, a B and a C paper, C and D paper, right? Just kind of taking that last opportunity to proofread. And when I say proofread, I don't really necessarily mean you are reading it to make sure it sounds okay. Proofreading is where you're checking for correctness. So this is, I am looking for eliminating as many errors as I can through this process. So I would look at proofreading as checking for correctness. So some of you may, since this is a new process with us, a lot of you guys will get feedback from your instructors, and that would normally point you to areas of weakness. But since we are in the college classroom, I'm wondering if you guys are aware of any weaknesses that you have yourself, and in the process of proofreading, you're checking that. So let's say, for instance, if I know as a writer that my spelling, normally I depend on spell check. My spelling in and of itself will normally need to be checked. It will normally need to be proofed. And if I know that about myself, then when I proofread a paper, I'm checking to make sure my spelling is correct. I'm checking to make sure I've eliminated all of those squiggly red lines, I believe, is the misspellings. So tap into your self-awareness when it comes to proofreading. Think about where you know you normally may fall a little bit short, whether that's grammar, whether that is your sentence skills, whether that's spelling, whether that is capitalization or punctuation. Have some idea of what you are looking for when you proofread. So if I know, again, spelling is an area where I tend to be weak, then when I proofread, that is especially what I'm looking for. I'm checking for that correctness. If I know that grammar issues, maybe subject verb disagreement, maybe I tend to write run-on sentences or fragment sentences, and I'm aware of this. I remember the feedback, I got in high school or anything like that. When you proofread, you would want to look for those errors. But again, I don't expect you guys to 100% catch everything. We are still in the process of learning, especially a lot of the grammatical concepts that you guys may struggle with. So if you have not yet accessed your Grammarly license, have you guys accessed Grammarly yet? I've asked.
Yes.
Okay, I heard yes. I know I've kind of sent the heads up out in Brightspace announcements. We talked about it in last week's class. That is a really useful tool to kind of help take some of the burden off your shoulders. Again, I do not expect you guys to be grammar gurus. I don't expect you to just go in, look at a paper, and automatically know what's wrong with it. But you can get help with that. That help is normally with, if you're writing in Microsoft Word, they normally have the grammar and spell check. Google Docs, I believe, also has that grammar and spell check capability. But Grammarly, it will immediately begin to recognize errors. And not only will it identify those errors for you, it also gives you suggestions of how you can correct that error. So again, with proofreading to be this process of correctness, it's not just enough that you see the error, you then would have to correct it. So allow Grammarly to help you with that. Allow Microsoft to help you, but keep in mind there will be some things that those programs may miss. So there's nothing that an old-fashioned proofreading, won't hurt. So I know sometimes when I write papers, especially if I'm tired eyes miss things. There's times I've written papers and I've left words out of sentences. So again, make sure you guys are not neglecting that last step of the 5-step writing process to proofread your paper. All right. On Wednesday, after you guys completed the writing session, I told you to email me what you had been working on, just so I can kind of see it as evidence. I think I got most of those But with it coming into my email, there may be a chance that I'm missing some of those. So all I was looking for with that was just to kind of see what was produced, so students weren't penalized or anything like that if I didn't respond or give you any feedback with that. Again, it was just to kind of track what students were doing in the class. So overall, I believe you guys let me know that the process on Wednesday was somewhat useful, because we will normally have, especially when we're working on a paper assignment, an essay assignment, we will have time for drafting in class, and it will look like what we did on Wednesday. You guys will kind of be put into small groups. You'll have an opportunity to really dive into the writing process, using those ideas to develop and support your main idea. I normally float in and out, giving any direction where I can. If that works for you, that's fine. But if not, if you felt like I didn't get enough of Ms. Cole's time, there were some questions that I needed, do not forget the oh so important office hour schedule. If you didn't get it in class, come and see me outside of class for us to kind of get that one-on-one time. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and move past this. Unless you guys have any questions. Are there any questions before I move on past the essay? All right. Okay. All right. Before we go into the today's lesson and what has been added to our week 7 module, look, first of all, let me pause. Can you guys believe we are at week 7? It really seems like not too long ago we were being introduced to each other, introduced to the course syllabus. But at this point, we are approaching the halfway mark. This is a 16-week course. We are approaching week 8, which is, again, that midterm, that halfway point. So I want us to kind of look back at what we've covered and what we have left to cover, especially as it pertains to the paper that you guys are working on. So one thing you'll find that I added in the week 7 module is a few things. Quite a bit of it is reading, but some of this reading will culminate in an activity or assignment this week. So make sure you guys are going through and checking this out. One thing I wanted for us to go over together is this ePortfolio student letter. You guys have been working on your first essay. Well, technically it is your first essay, but the second document that will go into your end of semester portfolio. So we've talked about this during those early weeks in the semester. 30% of your final grade in the class comes from the papers that you write, that final portfolio assessment. So I wanted to pause just a moment to bring you guys inside that conversation, for you guys to get a clearer view of what the next 8 to 9 weeks will look like. So hold on, let me pull this up. I know normally when I look at it in this window, it bugs me, but let me see. All right, this may work. All right, so even though I'm going through this together as a class, you guys see that this is in the week 7 module. So you can, of course, view this at your own pace anytime this week. But even though we've talked about the portfolio assessment, I want to remind you guys of that end of semester assessment and the work we've been doing to prepare you guys for it. So we've learned that the end of semester assessment in this class is the portfolio assessment. It's referred to as the e-portfolio assessment because the portfolio you guys will be submitting is electronic. It's all done online through Brightspace, okay? It says, for some students, this will be a continuation of a process that has been in effect over the last few semesters. For others, this may be a radical departure from how you expect grading in classes to operate. So I've asked this previously, but let me ask again. Are there any students in the class who is used to or familiar with a portfolio assessment process? Have you ever had to submit or turn in a portfolio for a final grade in the class? Anyone? Should I take that as a no? Okay, maybe not. That's okay. It is important to know that for this class, the English 96 class, that portfolio assessment, it works in conjunction with everything else you've done in the class. So a good way to look at the end of semester portfolio assignment in our class is all of the classwork, all of the papers, homework, discussion board, journals, etc. All of that is worth, let's say, 70% of your grade in the class. So it operates a majority of the class, but there is a test or an assessment that is added that will determine with certainty whether or not the student passes or fails the class. So you can do everything. You can submit everything. You could be making an A with the classwork and all of that, but it's the combination of classwork plus portfolio that will make the final determining factor of who passes the class and move on to the 101 next level. So look at the portfolio as the final or the exam that the student must pass in order to successfully complete the class. Okay, I would look at it like that. It says the basic idea behind employing an e-portfolio assessment is that the instructor and the department are able to assess a student's work more holistically at the end of the term, as opposed to assessing a student work based upon a more, um, you know, based on a collection of isolated assignments throughout the term. So the e-portfolio is designed to show student mastery of the outcome, student growth and development. And it's meant to be a holistic view, okay? So it's not just a simple collection of assignments and, kind of using these assignments to determine readiness. It is looking at a series of assignments, and based on how the student performs, it will determine, has the student met the outcomes for the class, or will they need to perhaps repeat in order to get that learning. So it says here that the e-portfolio will count as 30% of your grade. You know that. Since it is necessary for students to attain 70% in order to pass the course, the e-portfolio will play a large role in determining whether or not the student passes or fails. Now, this is important because in the past, let's say students can make it up to the end of the semester and you could be failing, perhaps maybe you could have a D in the class, and there is still time for you to turn it around. The English 96 class is slightly different because before a student can take the final assessment, they have to have a C in the class. So if you do not have a C in the class, or if you are not already passing the class by the time we take or students submit the portfolio, I want you guys to be aware. It is important to know, in essence, you have not passed the class. If by the time we make it to week 14 assessment and you have under a C, that's normally the time I tap a student on the shoulder and say, even if you were to pass the portfolio, you do not have enough points to pass the class. So I normally will tap that student on the shoulder and say, here is the last day to withdraw from the class. I would recommend you withdraw from the class because the points aren't there for you to pass it. So students should be working as hard as they can, as early as you can, to make sure you're in good standing in the class. Because even though you'll think you'll have until the end of the semester to turn it around week 13, week 12 or so, if you're not at a C, normally I'm telling that student, prepare for what you're going to do next semester, because the points aren't there for you to pass this class. So stay mindful of staying in good standing, a C or higher, as we approach week 14 of the semester. Okay. Where it asks who is required to submit an e-portfolio. It says all students enrolled in English 101. This should say all students enrolled in English 96 and English 101. Those are the two courses that are adhering to the e-portfolio assessment. So all English 96 students across City Colleges of Chicago, so across the district, they all participate in the CRT assessment and end of semester portfolio. Okay. Does that mean that all of my other grades do not count? We kind of talked about this already. Everything else you do, it does count. It operates at 70% of your grade. So it does count. Simply submitting a strong e-portfolio will not assure passing of a class. It is, again, the combination of the classwork plus that final e-portfolio assessment. Okay. So you guys may have heard me mention that the portfolios themselves are assessed by your instructor and also by the department. And I want you guys to be aware that I am not the only person who will be grading and looking at your portfolios, okay? It is assessed by the instructor first, but it is then given to the department for them to confirm or deny my assessment. So let's say, for instance, students have submitted their portfolio. Let's say I'm looking at Mercedes. So I've passed Mercedes' portfolio. I then submitted to the department for them to take a look at the outcomes for the class, and then they will determine, okay, yes, I agree that this student passes, or they would disagree with my initial scoring, okay? If I receive a disagreement, so where I passed the portfolio, another instructor may say they fail it. It would then go to a third reader to make that final determination. But it's important for you guys to know that I do not make the final determination alone. I do have a very strong influence. I can normally talk to those scoring instructors to kind of let them know why I pass in a particular student. But the reason we use the department is for them to administer a unbiased scoring of portfolios. A lot of times instructors, without meaning to do so, they'll grade a student based on how they improved or how hard they have tried, when the goal is based on outcome. What can the student perform? That is what we are looking at in the portfolio. So the department helps the English 96 instructor make a final determination. So we're to ask who will be grading these e-portfolios, your instructor, along with a member of the department, English faculty in the department. Okay. So what I'm kind of doing right now is just going over frequently asked questions about the portfolio. So I'll go through this, and if you guys have any questions on the
Excuse
other,
me. I
yeah,
have
go
a
ahead.
question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, when do we need to start setting this up? Because I remember on our first day you was telling us about it, and you told us to just like save all our writing
Yep.
assignments that we do.
Mhm.
So should we start setting it up as we keep going, or just wait until you give us like an exact due date?
Yeah. Oh no, we're going to set it up together in class. So we're going to set it up.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're going to set it up. So there is it's a process. But yeah, we do it together as a class. So I kind of like walk you guys through the setup of setting up your shell, your portfolio shell, adding the components or the documents to it, and even submitting it or sharing those portfolios. So that's something we do in class. If we are about at week 7 now, I'll say look more for that instruction. Week 8, week 9, we'll kind of start looking more at the PowerPoint presentation and going through those steps. But that's something we do as a class together. So you guys will be prepared ahead of time for submission of your final e-portfolios. Okay, that's a good question. All right, so where it asks what will go in the e-portfolios. So Mercedes just brought up the how I mentioned to you guys, save the paper, save certain papers that we work on in this class. The reason why is those papers will show back up in your final portfolio. So look where my spotlight is. These are the required documents. Now, what they're doing here, let me tell you how this letter is messing me up. They're talking about English 101 when they should be including English 96. So they did not include English 96 in that letter. However, let me preface. What is included in the English 96 text is there is that pre-semester expectation letter. This is what you guys completed week 1 on Jason Oda. So the diagnostic writing, where we look at what skills students have coming into the class, that sample, that writing sample is used to kind of frame your e-portfolio. It shows here is the writing skills the student had coming into the class. So every writing assignment you submit after that should be showing some type of growth, some type of improvement, some type of development. So this is why this paper is so important, that diagnostic, okay? Students will also be submitting a reflective writing. This is the final paper in the class, okay? So students normally complete this around week 12, around normally week 13. This paper is normally due the week that students are submitting their e-portfolios. So the reflective letter, another way you guys can look at this is the final paper of the class. And this paper generally will look at what learning or growth has taken place throughout the semester. So normally the topic of the final paper will look something like, in what ways have you grown and developed as a reader, writer, and critical thinker, throughout the semester? So they want to look at, they want you to discuss or articulate how you've grown, how you've improved. So this is that writing. We'll talk more about that as we approach the end of the semester. There are also two other documents. One is a revised essay. So it could either be the paper that you guys are working on now or another that we'll write. So students will have that choice for one revised essay that will be based on a reading in the class. Okay, so students have the option to include that. And the other essay that goes into the final portfolio is the Crt essay. So there is an essay portion on the critical reading test. And that essay that students will write in class will be included in the portfolio. So they get an opportunity to not only see how you perform with prepared papers that you had an opportunity to write in class, an opportunity to revise and take through the writing process, but they also will see how you write in somewhat of a timed session. So the final portfolio includes 4 documents. And let me just quickly review that. The diagnostic writing, you guys have already done that and submitted that. There is one essay that the student selects based on a reading, and that could be what you guys are writing now with the education and motivation paper. Students will also be adding a reflective letter. That's also known as your final paper in the class, and the Crt essay. Okay, so 4 papers total. That's why it's important you guys remember that first week I said if you're going to miss anything, I would maybe perhaps look at missing homework, but I would not miss any paper assignments. Not only do they count as 25% of your grade, they kind of double for the portfolio. So 25% for essays, but then it's also going to be 30%. Those papers will work as 30% in that final portfolio assessment as well. So whatever you do, make sure you are not failing to turn in papers. That is the quickest way to forfeit your portfolios. All right. And because all of this needs to take place in the process of the class, this is why we don't just at the end of the semester allow students, okay, well, you missed 2 papers, well, get those 2 papers into me. No, there's a process where from one paper, you are supposed to take that knowledge and skills and grow. And we should see that in the second paper that you write. Then you take those knowledge and skills, and I should see the growth in the final paper you write. So it is a process, and it's built through the process of submitting essays. So make sure you guys are doing those and submitting those on time. All right. Another thing to point out, the revised essay is one of the most important features of the e-portfolio because it shows process. One of the outcomes for the class talks about the student is able to engage in a recursive reading and writing process. So the essays themselves should show that they've gone through a process. So this is where we go through drafts and revised versions. So when you guys are given the opportunity to revise, you really want to make sure you are taking it, because even though you submitted a first draft, it's the revised version that is viewed in the portfolio assessment. Okay. So really make sure you guys are staying on top of that. So again, just to underscore what Mercedes brought up, how first week I had really implored you guys to save all of the papers that you're working on, even drafts, because those documents can be used in your e-portfolio to show process. Okay. When will we be submitting these e-portfolios? Plan around week 14, and that is about a week and a half when we come back from spring break. So there may be some overlap of you guys are going on spring break, but at spring break, you may be working on, let's say, final revisions or things like that, because when you guys come back from spring break, we will be hitting the ground running with final CRT and final portfolio assessment. So you'll be submitting these e-portfolios week 14, normally 2 weeks out, about a week out. I start really getting heavy in reminders, checklists, things like that to help better prepare students. So you'll get information. It says review the syllabus for the exact date. On the course syllabus, I did itemize an exact date for the CRT test and the portfolio submission. So I'm going to go to the syllabus too to kind of give you guys that information right off. When should I be revising essays? Normally revisions are built in as assignments. So just like you guys had a assignment to write your essay, normally there is an assignment for you to revise that essay. So the opportunities to revise are presented in the class. Now, let's say that you guys have revised, you had the opportunity to improve your grade. That opportunity exists only once. So through your first revision, you have an opportunity to revise and improve the grade as well. But let's say after you've done that, you still feel like, oh, I can still improve this paper a bit further. Just because it won't necessarily count for a grade doesn't mean that it won't, in the end, look really well in your portfolio if you revise it again. So keep in mind that revision, whether we're doing it for a grade or whether it is for the portfolio, it is very, very useful in showing that you've improved and that you've grown in your writing. So that's, again, is why revision is so important. All right. So relatively short letter, but full of important information. Did you guys have any questions for me about anything that we covered here? While you guys are maybe pondering that, I'm going quickly to the syllabus to see if I can find where the firm dates are on our syllabus, just so you guys can put it in your calendar now. Bear with me 1 second. Now, I know we talked and went thoroughly over the syllabus that first day of class, but anybody who, let's say, perhaps missed that first week, anybody who missed that first day, but never had a chance to really go back and look at the course syllabus, please make sure you are taking time to review the syllabus. It's required reading because the information here, students are held accountable for it, whether you read it or not. So let's say, for instance, at the end of the semester, a student has said something like, oh, well, I didn't know we needed to do X, Y, or Z, or, oh, I didn't know that this operated as such a percentage of my grade. Even if you didn't know it, but it was posted in the syllabus, you're held responsible for that information. So you really want to make sure you got a working understanding of what's going on in this syllabus. All right, sorry you guys for scrolling like this, but let me see. One thing the syllabus says is that week 8 is midterm. That's next week. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Hold on. Okay, so it says here, look, let me use my spotlight. Sorry, you guys, it may be kind of hard to read. That the CRT assessment is scheduled for April 28th. I'm just going to put it on our calendar, so you guys kind of always see it on our Brightspace calendar. So that's when we'll take the actual test in class. And then the portfolio is due that week 15. Okay. All right, so we got a little bit of better idea of timeline, okay? So let me stop share for just a second. Give us time to take in what we've kind of just covered. Hold on. If you guys missed that, I got it off the syllabus, but one thing to know, CRT is April 28th. Portfolios are due week 15. So it's going to be when we come back after you guys complete your CRT assessment. Okay. With that being said, are there any questions? Let me pause for a second. Can I hit you guys with a lot?
Yeah. Excuse me, ma'am.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. I would like to tell you that the CLT assessment and all that. Can you send it to our mail?
That student letter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the module. So it's on Brightspace in the week 7 module.
Okay.
Yeah, so you guys have it on Brightspace inside that week 7 module. It's posted there.
Okay.
And with that, I wanted to, let me see if I can show you guys a CRT. Hold on really quickly. Next week we are going to have, well, actually not next week, early week 9. Okay. So let's say, hold on, let me look at my calendar. Monday, March 15th. Next week is the 8th. Plan for Monday, March 15th to be midterm. That's going to be our practice CRT date. Okay, so that gives us this week, all of next week to, if not plan, prepare to discuss. If you guys have any questions or any concerns about it. So even though we've learned that the final CRT will take place April 28th, I like to introduce students to the process early. I like for you guys to kind of know what you are encountering with the final CRT, what it looks like, what kind of study habits are required in order for you to be successful. So let me quickly show you guys a CRT test, okay? Similar to what we'll do 2 weeks from today for our midterm. Hold on. So a lot of what we've done so far has been preparing us, even though it's been kind of taking us through the steps. But a lot of what we've been covering has been preparing you guys for that CRT test, preparing you guys for the midterm, because what we've been studying and what we've really been practicing are the strategies. And those strategies is what you guys will have to rely on in order to study and make your way through that CRT assessment. So for those of you who may not know, CRT is a critical reading test. Not only are you guys submitting a portfolio at the end of the semester, you are also completing a critical reading test. This is both a reading course and a writing course. So to assess students accurately, we not only look at writing in the portfolio, we also look at reading skills. Is the student able to comprehend what they read? Okay, so the critical reading test will normally provide students with a text. Okay, so let me show you guys what that text may look like. Hold on. For the practice CRT, what I've done traditionally is I give students a shorter version of the final CRT. So what you guys will normally find is a, let's say, 5-page article, okay? And attached to that article, students will be writing an essay. No, I'm sorry, not an essay, a summary, where you are summarizing the author's key idea and main points. So what we've been learning about summary, we'll get more practice on that in the days leading up to the practice CRT. But not only will you guys be assessed on your summary writing skills, you'll also be assessed on comprehension questions of that text. So they'll ask you questions such as, what's the author's main idea? What are some supporting details that the author used in order to develop this idea? What were some vocabulary words you identified? It may even ask you vocabulary questions. And this is why I've kind of always prompted you guys to include definitions in your annotations, because sometimes the whole step of having to look a word up can be time consuming during a time test when you have that definition written right in your margins. Okay, so a lot of times on the CRT, they'll ask not only comprehension questions, they'll ask you definition, vocabulary questions. They'll also ask you connection questions. So they'll say, have you had similar experiences to what the author is describing? Does those experience allow you to look at the situation differently? Explain why. So a lot of the questions on the CRT test will ask you to explain your position. So if you agree or disagree, let's say for instance with the author, they will ask you, why do you feel the way you do? Do you feel that this example was the best way to help the author explain their point? Explain why you feel the way you do. So where we've talked about previously, you guys making those notes in your margins, really being engaged through your annotations, all of that is just helping to prepare you for that CRT, where the only thing students are able to use for the CRT test is their annotations. So you're not able to use, let's say, other documents, especially other documents that you may find useful. Students only have options of using annotations. So that's why I've kind of been on you guys to annotate as clearly as possible and from beginning to end, because a lot of the questions on the CRT walks you through the various parts of a reading. All right, let me show you guys this sample CRT. Hold on. And I'll share my screen in just a moment. Oh, I know what I can do. Okay, sorry. It keeps taking me out of Brightspace into Adobe, like my Acrobat Reader, and it's taking me away from what I'm trying to do. Bear with me one second. Let me pull this up. Yeah, because it's a test, or because I presented it as a test, it's not letting me, it's kind of like locking it when I try to pull it up. Let me try this one more thing. Hold on. Has to be a better way. Oh, I may be able to do this. Oh, here it is. It's hiding under quizzes. Okay. Let me share my screen, show you guys this. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. You guys let me know if you can see it. I'm trying to manipulate the system. Look, it's working hard to not let me, but let's see. All right, you guys can see my screen. It's still
Yeah.
not letting me. Okay, so it's wanting me to take the quiz, but okay. Let me show you guys just a few questions that may be asked. So again, for the final CRT or for the practice CRT that will be taken in 2 weeks, March 15th, I'll add that to the calendar. That's midterm day. Okay. Students will be taking a practice CRT. The goal is to give you experience for that final assessment. So you guys will come in here, you'll have directions, but the main thing you need to know is students have an article that they'll get prior to test date. They'll have an opportunity to read that article, annotate that article, begin practicing on summarizing that article on the actual day of the exam or the midterm. Students will use that article to answer questions, okay? So let's just say I click on. Yeah, it's not letting me do it with you guys on, with me sharing my screen. Okay, it just won't let me. So let me stop, which I'm kind of happy about that. That means Brightspace has those securities in order. I know a lot of instructors were worried that by giving tests or administering tests through Brightspace, if students will be able to share screens and kind of share answers. It's clear we cannot share our screens when we are into or logged into particular assessment. So it's just not letting me do it. So I'll try to explain it. There's normally parts of the CRT test. So the opening part will again normally ask you guys to write a summary. From there, you will normally have about 10 multiple choice questions. And those multiple choice questions will ask a variety of questions about the reading. Main questions are based on what's the author's main idea, right? What is that thesis? From there, they will then ask, based on this main idea, what detail best supports it? And it'll kind of lay out the details from the text. They may ask questions again about vocabulary. They'll ask compare and contrast questions. So they may ask you, do you feel that examples worked better than statistics in helping to support or develop the author's point here? You know, little questions like that. But again, all of the questions is designed to assess your understanding of the text. So what you guys need to know, if you do not understand the text, the assessment will be able to root out that this student does not understand the text. So they ask you similar questions in various different ways to make sure that the student, if asked frontwards, backwards, over and under to explain the meaning of this text, that student is definitely clear on and understands the meaning of that text. So plan for the midterm to ask multiple questions about a reading and for you to respond. Multiple choice. There's also a short answer portion where they'll ask you to explain why you think this or why you feel a particular way. And then finally, part 3 of the final CRT is the essay portion. So now they take the main idea or questions about the reading, and now they ask you for your opinion about it. See, remember, when we write essays, it's different from when we write summaries. Everything about the CRT, the summary, the reading comprehension portion, that's all about your understanding of the text. It's about you objectively reading, engaging in a conversation with the author, working through an understanding of the text. It's not until you get to that last portion on essay that students, now you can write about what you think about the text. Now we want to know your opinion on it. Do you agree or disagree? Would you have handled it the same way? So they ask various questions. Plan for the essay question when you annotate. So a lot of times the final question will ask you, do you agree or disagree with the author's main idea? That's another way to find out, do you comprehend? Because whatever essay that student writes, when they are supporting whether or not they agree or disagree, what they are pinpointing as the main idea will let me know, did they understand that text? Okay. So again, it all goes back to comprehension, reading comprehension. So you want to look at the strategies we've talked about, we've been covering those strategies, and I'm kind of writing them in chat just to kind of remind everybody in real time. The previewing process, looking at the title, looking at author information, making predictions, inferences. This is normally what we do when we before we start reading. So we call this pre-reading strategies, right? Remember how the handout we were introduced to week 2 looked at the various the process by which we are kind of reading to understand. So there's that pre-reading, there's a during reading process. That's when you guys are normally annotating, taking notes in the margins. This is normally your, I'll say vocabulary can come into play here as well. But while you are reading, you're still making predictions, because through my pre-reading process, if I notice that the title is letting me know this is going to talk about some kind of process, then I can kind of make those connections while I am reading the text. So I'll put here 2 connections. Okay, so these are things we've been working on. There's also an after reading process that students then review and study annotations. There is the process of writing a summary, and what I call contextualization. So making sense of it all. Now that you have the whole picture, what does it all mean, right? So the CRT is going to assess how well you are able to exhibit the reading strategies. Okay, it's going to be able to really tell me what has a student been able to retain in order to better comprehend a text. So I'll be looking for how well a student does. And what I'm learning is that students who tended to write better summaries had stronger annotations. Students who tended to do better with the essay portion on the CRT and even the multiple choice questions had stronger annotations. So there is a connection between how you read and engage with a text and how you comprehend and understand that text. If there is no real engagement while you're reading, you will not be able to understand or comprehend that text. So it has to kind of be this effort. So again, just to let you guys know, I've kind of gone long on this, but CRT beginning of week 9, that Monday, March 15th. Come prepared that while we may not have instruction on that day, it will be a day designed, the 2 hour and 40 minutes for students to complete the CRT test. Okay, so plan for that. Are there any questions, you guys, about anything I said about the student letter or about what we just discussed with the practice CRT, or just what we know about the CRT assessment in general? Any questions here? All right, we'll have a little time to work on it. So what I'll have or try to have for our next class is I'll try to download an actual copy of a CRT for us to look at. I just didn't have one prepared, thinking I could pull it up on Brightspace, but it's not allowing me to. All right, so let me go out of this and let me share my screen again to kind of take us back to our latest module. So let me pull this up. And while I'm pulling up the module, let me say this too. I'm kind of feeling like the discussion for midterm as if I'm having that now, but know that how you guys are scored for engagement in the class is through the modules. Now, I know you are thinking, well, I'm turning in the assignments, and that's good, but the engagement in the modules is equally as important. So what that means is even if there is no assignment attached to a reading, I still want you to read that text. And I'm able to track what students open in modules and what they read. So over the weekend, I've kind of did the class reports. I ran reports on engagement, and most of you are engaging regularly. So there will be, it'll show how many logins next to your name. So I can see if classes started about 7 weeks ago and we meet 2 times a week, then okay, this is about how many logins the student should have. So I can see that. That's showing me the student is regularly accessing the course. Remember, that's one of the requirements for engagement. So I see that. Another one of the requirements for engagement and active pursuit was completing modules. And what I'm finding is we aren't so committed to completing the modules as we are to completing the assignments. So the modules is equally as important. So I'll see some cases where out of 28 documents in the modules, student has accessed 8. So I can see whether or not a student has clicked on and read a particular assignment. I can see if it was ever even considered by looking at, here's how many documents that have kind of been sent out through the modules. Here's how many that student has actually read or completed. So I'm able to get a good view that sometimes in our modules, we're not looking at everything in our modules. We may be looking at, oh, okay, now what's that assignment? And going directly to the assignment. But that's not how the modules are designed, you guys. So really make sure that when you are accessing, oh, look, I'm in the wrong area. When you're accessing our Brightspace course page, it isn't enough that you just complete the assignments. It's important that you complete the modules. That is what I'm assessing, and that's what I'm looking at for participation and engagement in the class. Okay, so let me go back to our content. This is where the modules will find. The way I score engagement and participation is who's completing the modules. Okay, so try not to treat the documents that are included in modules as suggestions. Like these aren't just some suggestions that I'm making. This is required reading, required consideration. So for this week, what you guys have in your module is the ePortfolio student letter. So that's reading. And we kind of just went over that together as a class. You guys can take time to go over it individually. There's also this introductions and conclusions PowerPoint. Those of you who are kind of proofreading your papers, some of you may be proofreading for correctness to make sure your intro and your conclusions operate as they should. We have the PowerPoint here that you guys can use. It gives you tips to help with students who may struggle with beginnings and endings. One thing we're going to go over this week is fragments and run-ons. I didn't want to give it to you before you embark on the writing process. I think it'll be easier for us to address fragments and run-ons when you guys are revising the writing assignment. So if you know that run-ons and fragments is something that you have traditionally struggled with, definitely you want to review that, read it. But everyone, of course, anything that is in the module, you want to read all of them because it is pertinent information to what we're covering that week. Okay. And lastly, we'll end on Wednesday with the discussion, reading and discussion of good versus bad English. This idea that there is good and bad English. So take a look at the module when you guys kind of get an opportunity. Make sure whether there's an assignment attached to it or not, you guys are still weekly engaging in reading your module. So one of the reasons why I didn't go heavy with homework is because when done appropriately, our modules is the weekly study. So this is kind of letting students know this is what we're studying this week. So from this Monday to next Monday, we are looking at, look, I went back to week 6. We are looking at kind of preparing for that, the paper, the intros and conclusions, the run-ons and fragments as you guys are proofreading and checking for correctness. And then, of course, this last text is what's going to move us into our next unit, which is language and identity. All right. So hold on, one more thing. So let's say, for instance, week 6. Week 6, maybe the only thing students worked on was the essay, okay? But while you were working on the essay, students are required to read the chapter on the writing process and required to read the little short narrative on The Most Important Day by Helen Keller. Even though we didn't get a chance to discuss it, what's really good about this text is it gives another example of what you guys are doing with your paper. It is a narrative. It takes a look at a thesis and how that thesis is then used to build the entire essay. So it operates kind of as an extension of an essay. I mean, of an example, of a sample. So even though you wrote the paper, in addition to writing the paper, you needed to read this chapter. You also needed to take a look at that sample. So don't forget about the module. Everything that I consider in terms of engagement and participation is based on the module, okay? Not so much what you guys submit for assignments. All right. Are there any questions on that? All right. I'll leave that be. One thing I wanted to talk about before we, hold on, let me look at what time it is. 12:16. Yes. Let me just take a little small moment to open up the floor to any questions on the paper. Any questions about intros and conclusions? Any questions about developing your thesis? Let me kind of just open up the floor for any concerns with that. Okay, if there are none, that's okay. Make sure you guys are submitting your papers. Now, I think that I included the link on an announcement. I'll add the link to this week's module, just so you guys kind of have it in an easy to find space. So hold on. Yeah, so we have the link for where you guys will be submitting the essay, but I'll also add a link to our calendar. Okay. All right. So I'm going to assume we don't have any questions. That was what I had really planned or set aside a lot of time for today, was to kind of address that. But if there are none, I see something. Go ahead. Well, I can go over with you after class, Dominique. because we spend so much time with it, I kind of don't want to go back over it, but I can go over what you missed towards the end of class. Okay. Did you have any other question? Okay. All right. With that, let me kind of prepare or pull up what I plan for us to work on today. So one thing you guys noticed in the content was the handout on fragments and run-ons. And before we really get into feedback on your essays, because that's one thing. When you guys submit your papers, I immediately start grading. I try to turn the grade around really quickly. So like in about a week, next Monday, you guys can plan to have your papers graded. But in the grading of the papers, I use language that I want to make sure doesn't throw students off or confuse them. A lot of times I use language based on the basic parts of speech. So even though I'm mentioning basic parts of speech now, week 7, you guys were introduced to the basic parts of speech week 3, week 4. It was one of the required readings in our module. And what I did was I gave a back to basics worksheet that kind of gave students what I call a cheat sheet on just what the 8 basic parts of speech are, and why they are important in our writing. I call them the building blocks of our writing. So sometimes you guys may turn in a paper and I may give feedback that'll say something like use stronger verbs, or I may say something like your verbs are inconsistent. You want to be consistent with your verb use, right? Well, if I'm using that as a feedback, it will be up to you to then go and proofread your verbs and kind of make sure you're making the necessary adjustments. So I want to practice or kind of review what is your understanding of the 8 basic parts of speech, kind of blow the dust off of that in our minds so that we can kind of be prepared for the feedback that we may get on our papers. A lot of times I'll tell students, this is a fragment because it doesn't have a subject or that main verb. I kind of want you guys to not be lost when you encounter that kind of feedback. So, good. We got a little bit of time. I want us to do a review on the 8 basic parts of speech. And I've been trying to do this for 2 weeks using Kahoots. But since we're kind of reaching a lull with our discussion of Essay 1, this will be a good time to get this in. And to really, again, prep you guys for the language you may encounter as you are getting your graded essays back. Hold on really quickly. So this may seem old school. It may seem like you haven't talked about nouns or verbs or prepositions or interjections since grammar school, but I promise there's a method to this madness. Even though I've kind of been encouraging you guys to use Grammarly, we will have grammar exercises, homework, and I think this can help. Hold on, let me pull this up. It's moving a tad bit slow with my Zoom running, so bear with me 1 second. Sorry, you guys. Here it is. All right, so you guys may be familiar with Kahoots. I use it sometimes. Sometimes I opt for discussions, But this is a way for me to really see what students know, you know, where perhaps I may need to include additional study. So this week when we'll talk about run-ons and fragments, before we have that discussion, it's important for us to review the basic parts of speech. So let me share with you guys this Kahoots pen and information for you guys to join in our basic parts of speech group. And I know you guys may have used Kahoots, let's say in your high schools. So you may have an app already on your phone, but whether you're using an app or whether you're using your laptop, that's what you guys will use to access a really quick game that will kind of help test our knowledge of the parts of speech. Okay, so are you guys able to see the link? Okay, I got it here. It's saying waiting for players. All right, I got you, Daisy. Take a few minutes for you guys to get signed in. We'll do this quickly. Got you, Malik. See you, Kelly, Tony, Vanessa. See you, Mercedes. See you, Natalia. I see you. Oh man, I went from 7 to 8 until I lost somebody like Malik. Oh, I hope I didn't. Let me go ahead and get started. So let's see, there's about 7, 8 students signed up, but there are 13 students in the class. So for those of you who have not got into Kahoot, go ahead and take, let's say, 2 more minutes to get signed into this, and then we'll get started. All right, I have 8. So that means there's about 5 of us who are not logged in. Okay, I got 9. Good. Thank you, Auntie. About 4 of us. Oh, I lose. I keep losing somebody. Okay, let me go ahead and get started before I lose us anymore. Let's see. Who did I just lose? Daisy. There she is. Okay. Let me get started. Is there any particular reason, Sam? Like, what is it telling you? Is it telling you anything particular?
It's making me create an account first.
Even by going through the www.kahoot.it? Because normally that'll take, it does, okay. Well, try it. It shouldn't ask you to set up an account first, unless, hold on. Uh-oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm making sure that
I
there's,
got it right now.
okay, you got it. Okay, good. All right, let me go ahead and get started while I got us. Well, hold on. I'm waiting on Sam. Hold on. See you, Josh, Mari. Thank you. Dominique. All right, got you, Sam. All right, let me go ahead and get started. And again, keep in mind, even though you guys may have reviewed this, you may have read it, it's been a while. So this is going to be a real, true review. Don't be hard on yourself if you don't do as well. It's just kind of allowing me to see what we know and what we may need to work on first when we start our grammar instruction, okay? So let's do this really quickly. Even if you get kicked out for some reason, it'll still allow you to join in wherever we are. All right. 16 quick questions. I am a word that shows action or state of being. What am I? You select your answers from below. Word that shows action or state of being. What is that? All right, a verb, good. The majority of you are action words, a state of being. And when you hear state of being, that's normally your to be verbs. I am, she is, we are. So that am, is, the have, has. Those are your state of being verbs. And correct, that is a verb, good. One important thing to know about a verb, you cannot have a complete sentence without a verb. So when we talk about things like fragments, by definition, a fragment is an incomplete sentence. And what requires a complete sentence is a subject or your main noun, a verb or a predicate, and it must express a complete thought. So verbs are really important in our writing because in order to write complete and correct sentences, a verb has to be present. Okay, let's look at this next question. All right, Auntie's on top. Shout outs, Dominique is right behind. Let's go to our next question. I am a person, place, thing, or idea. I saw how quick you guys responded to this, so I know that this is one of the more easier questions. All right, good. Majority of you guys, again, a noun is normally that person, place, thing, or idea. That's one of those things that is stuck in my head when I think about the basic parts of speech. Noun, it names a person, place, or thing, or an idea. And nouns, just like verbs, have to be present in a complete sentence. A lot of times when you guys will do grammar study, it gets confusing when they may ask you about subject, especially if you have more than one noun in a sentence. So we'll get practice of identifying main nouns and kind of separating them as subject and what constitutes as a direct object, okay? So we'll get a little bit more practice with that. But good job, that is a noun. That puts Sam on top. Good job, thank you. Malik is coming in second there. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, and been are all what part of speech? I kind of gave you guys a hint on this one. Okay, so we may have been a little bit uncertain on this. And verbs. Verbs are some of the trickiest parts of speech because they take on so many different forms. So we'll definitely get a lot more practice with verbs. But verbs are Our to be verbs are the am, is, are, was, were, be, being, and being. Most of the errors with grammar, again, it happens around verbs, whether it's the linking verbs or your helping verbs. To be verbs are what I call irregular verbs. So as you are going from singular to plural, or from, let's say, past tense to present tense, the spelling will change. So are and was, right, is like the plural form, past tense use of the to be verb. So it gets a little bit complicated. We'll definitely do more study, but I see one student identified the to be verbs, am, is, are, was, were, be, being, and being as being verbs. Good. All right, Tony, I see you. All right, let's look at this next one. I am a word that describes a noun, which is a person, place, thing, or idea. What am I? So they say they describe nouns. What part of speech is that? All right, good. Overwhelming majority, adjectives. Yes, when we talk about description, I don't know if you guys remember our whole talk about literature, how you read literature. Literature reads different from standard essays or articles in academia because they rely heavily on descriptive language, right? So we talk about adjectives, we'll talk about adverbs. Those are your parts of speech that describe. So adjectives describe nouns. So when we think about nouns, let's say boy or girl, an adjective will be that extra description. So what if I say a tall boy? Or what if I say short and skinny boy, right? Short and skinny is the adjectives that describe the noun boy. So you can use as many as you want, but what adjectives do is they make your writing more vivid. You know, if we can talk about a boy, how better are you able to visualize that boy if I add adjectives like the tall, serious boy, or the short, unassuming lady, right? Those descriptive words allow you to paint a certain picture in your mind. It makes that text more vivid. So adjectives are descriptors. Good. Let's look at this next one. Sam. All right, Sam is in here. Look, competitive. Tony. I want to say Tony and Sam. We kind of moving between first and second place. All right, let's look at this. Mountain, Bruce, house, kindness, and cactus are all examples of what part of speech? All right. Good. And I really think more of us should identify this as a noun. We know that a mountain, that's a thing. Bruce is a person. House is a place, right? So we know a noun is a person, place, or thing. Then all that these examples represent is a noun. It may have been confusing because they put them in capital letters. I wish they hadn't have done that, but it's still identifying nouns. And nouns are important because, let's say, for instance, you guys receive feedback and I'll state a sentence is a fragment, it's lacking a noun. You would then know, oh, I need to add a who or a what to my sentence. It's missing. Who am I referring to? What am I talking about? The noun or the subject will normally identify that in a sentence. Okay. What else? All right. Sam stays on top. Malik moves up. I am a word that shows a relationship and location between nouns and pronouns. What am I? So what shows a relationship and location between nouns and pronouns? All right. Okay. We were split on this. 5 said conjunction. I was thinking conjunction as well. And 5 said preposition. So words that show relationship and location generally are your prepositions. If you guys remember the handout that I posted, I believe it was in week 2 module or week 3 module, I gave a list of prepositions. And what you guys will see in that list is it always shows relationship and location. It's either something on, in, outside, under, on. Prepositions use language that is showing or points to location. In, on, under, until, like all of the language with prepositions normally represent or connect to either a location or a relationship between those words. So this was a little bit tricky. We'll see how we do with this next question. All right, good job, Tony. Sam and Malik, my top 3. All right, look at this. Broken bottle, lush forest, and sparkling gem. All of the bold words are part of what speech? So look at broken, lush, sparkling. What parts of speech are these words? Good. Adjectives, yeah. And I kind of don't like how they said, look, the bolded words, but when we read it, you can kind of see how it works, right? Broken bottle, lush forest, sparkling gem. All of the words that aren't bolded are nouns. And we kind of came off a question where it was asked, what part of speech describes nouns? So it kind of is asking the same questions in various ways to test your knowledge. So adjectives, broken is an adjective that describes the bottle. Lush is an adjective that describes the noun forest. Sparkling is an adjective that describes the gem. So again, we know adjectives help to make our writing more vivid, to kind of paint this picture. Well, we get a better picture when we think of not just a gem, but a sparkling gem. Not just a forest, but a lush forest. Or let's say a sparse forest, right? One that's empty or full of dead trees. So again, adjectives help to describe our nouns. Something just came into chat. Now, I think we'll get a couple of looks at adverb. Okay, Tony, he's maintaining that top spot. Malik is gaining on you. I am a word that describes or modifies a verb, which is an action or state of being. What am I? So if adjectives describe our nouns, what describes our verbs? Okay, good. Overwhelming. Good. Adverb. We already know adjectives describe nouns. Adverbs describe our verbs. So the purpose again of these parts of speech is to add that descriptive, that vivid, that imagery that, it allows you to visualize what you're reading. Those moments in our text normally takes place when you are using your adjectives and adverbs. So good, overwhelming majority there. Let's see who rose to the top on this one. Okay. Ooh, probably like 40 points apart. Tony and Malik, good. Adverbs. And one thing you guys will see once you get more comfortable with these parts of speech, your use of them will elevate your writing. There's a certain maturity in writing that emerges when students are aware of the moves they're making with adjectives, when they're aware of the moves they're making with adverbs, or what I call strong verbs. So we'll get practice with that. Good. So I'm kind of seeing, ooh, on, look, beside, of, under, over, to, inside, and through. Those are all parts of what part of speech? All right. Prepositions, good. You guys remember that little small blurb of description I gave early on. Anything that talks about location or the relationship between like a noun and a location, that's your prepositions. And prepositions, when we move into prepositional phrases, it's normally the preposition and the noun that follows it, right? So maybe we'll look at that in just a moment. All right. It was close. Malik has inched out ahead. I have Sam coming up into that second spot and Tony rounding out my top three. Let's look at this next question. I am a word that describes excitement or emotion in the form of an exclamation. What am I? Okay. Good. Overwhelming majority interjection. Good. Interjection is one of those modern parts of speech. It operates as a part of the sentence. So let me give an example of an interjection. Wow, we got another 3 inches of snow last week, right? So that wow, that moment of excitement, that uh, moment of exclamation, right? Because that wow is normally characterized with an exclamation point. Then it says, we got another 3 inches of snow last week, right? The interjection, that wow before we start the sentence, is considered a part of speech. And it's normally characterized not just with the exclamation point. Sometimes interjections are characterized also with commas. So, but the easiest way to spot an interjection is with the exclamation point. It normally is found either at the beginning or at the end of a sentence, and it normally has an exclamation point. All right, so Tony moving up. I still have my big three. Very, quickly, regularly, often, kindly, and lightly are all what parts of speech? Has that ly at the end, if you guys noticed that. Okay, good. These are your adverbs. Normally adverbs are characterized with ly. Those are just what I call the most common form of your adverbs. They normally will take a adjective and add the ly at the end. And that's normally how some of the most common adverbs are formed, simply by adding that ly. But adverbs answer questions specifically. So they answer how, they answer to what extent, They answer what kind. So when you look at adverbs, especially those like quickly or regularly or kindly, think of a sentence like, I go to the dentist regularly. So if adverbs describe our verbs, go is my verb, and how often do I go? Regularly. So regularly is the adverb that is describing the go. Okay, that's how the adverbs work. They're normally linked directly to that verb. So I go to the dentist regularly. Regularly is my adverb that is describing, you know, how often I go. Okay. Another is another we can look at here is I study often. Look, I'm freestyling, but let's say just for the sake of an example, I study often. Well, study is our verb. Often describes how often, I mean, when or how that person studies. I study often. So adverbs and adjectives, they answer questions about the word that they're modifying or that they're describing. So I study often. Often is the adverb that describes, you know, the frequency of study, right? What about kindly or lightly? Here's another that comes to mind. The cheerleaders danced badly. So cheerleaders is our noun. Danced is the action verb, past tense, badly. So badly is the adverbs that describe how the cheerleaders danced. So it's answering a question about that verb dance. The cheerleaders danced badly. So it just gives, again, a little bit more information. So I'm able to visualize these cheerleaders all off beat or missing some moves. So again, it helps to give us a vivid picture and add the necessary detail. All right, good. Malik is in head. Moving on ahead. Natalia, we got Sam moved on up. Oh no, Sam was there. Natalia is new. Okay, I see you, Natalia. Moving up into the second part. All right, I am a word used to connect clauses or sentences or to coordinate words in a clause. What am I? So what part of speech connects clauses or sentences or coordinate words in a clause? Okay, good. Yes. All right, pretty good group here. The majority recognize that conjunctions are normally what's used to connect clauses or sentences. Oh, and what I like so much about this question, one of the handouts in our weekly module, in our module this week, is about run-ons and fragments. And one way that students can correct a run-on is by using a conjunction to connect that, you know, connected to a independent clause or to another sentence. A lot of times the error in a run-on sentence is the fact that proper punctuation isn't used. And what allows you to include that punctuation is conjunction plus comma or conjunction and semicolon, right? So I like the word conjunctions are used to connect clauses or sentences to one another and to coordinate words in a clause. So when we think about conjunctions, we think about our coordinating conjunctions. You guys remember fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Have you guys ever used the mnemonic device fanboys?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I learned it when I was in grammar school. That's that for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. And that's the way to keep up or to memorize the coordinating conjunctions, right? So anytime we see the word and, it shows a connection because we know that what's being included is in addition to, right? So that's what and means, in addition to. Anytime we see the word but, it shows a condition. So I can say, you know, Sandra is my best friend, but she's a gossip. So the but is making a connection between the ideas in that sentence. It's kind of showing the condition of it. If we hear, if we see the word yet or so I can say is a cause and effect. It shows the relationship or coordinates a relationship in cause and effect. You know, Malcolm X copied the dictionary so he could, better comprehend his reading. So conjunctions work as connectors. When they're used, it kind of connects the ideas within those statements, right? And of course, they connect sentences. So we'll get more practice with that. All right, a couple more questions and then we'll put this to bed. Good, Malik, standing strong on top. Oh, okay. Wow, oh yeah, amazing, ahem, ah, and oops are all what part of speech? So one part they didn't really talk. Yeah, that was the interjection. And one way to always recognize your interjections is they normally have an exclamation point or a comma. And you guys kind of see that with the options presented. They all or some have exclamation point or comma. So clearly our interjections. They're normally kind of separate from the sentence, but kind of show strong emotion. All right, good, Malik, Sam. I am a word that replaces a person, place, thing, or idea. What replaces a person, place, thing, or idea in our writing? All right, good, good. Because I had just made a note here that as far as things we need to study, I put verbs, conjunctions. I want to get a little bit more study in conjunctions too. And I put pronouns, and I put that before they had even asked a question about pronouns. So I'm glad you guys at least understand what a pronoun is. It's a word used in place of a noun. So where I can say in my writing, let me say, April is my best student and always studies. Look, I'm sorry. I'm freestyling and I'm trying to get a little bit too involved with this sentence. I'll say April is my best student. She always shows up on time. Okay. So the she that I utilize instead of being repetitive and using April again is the pronoun that allows me to use, is a pronoun that I can use in place of saying April over and over again. So April is my best student. She always arrives to class on time. She is a personal pronoun. So there's various types of pronoun. You have your personal pronouns. You have interrogative pronouns, those that ask questions, who, what, where, when. So you have various forms of pronouns. So we'll get practice with that. So good, you guys did well. Again, let me reiterate, pronouns are important and used to help us avoid being repetitive. So you're not saying April time and time again, or kind of using that same noun again and again. You can utilize some variation with pronouns. Okay. We'll get practice. Good job, Malik, Sam, and Tony. All right. And, but, or, as, if, when, than, and because are all what part of speech? Okay, good. That's your conjunctions. We talked about fanboys already, so I know you guys recognized and, but, or when you saw it. The other pronoun, I'm sorry, the other conjunctions, as, I believe that's if, when, then, and because, those are our subordinating conjunctions. So I know you guys may remember coordinating conjunctions. There were also subordinating conjunctions, and subordinating conjunctions are what allow us to link or connect a independent clause to a dependent clause. So this is something else we're going to learn this week when we go a little bit deeper into our discussion on fragments and run-ons. Fragments are incomplete sentences. They lack either a noun or subject, main subject, they lack a verb, or or they fail to express a complete thought. So there's a formula for writing a complete sentence. It has to kind of check those three boxes. But when we may find that we have a fragment, one thing we do to correct them is to use our conjunctions to connect the fragment or the dependent clause to a sentence or independent clause, in your writing. So that's one way you can correct that. So we're going to talk about conjunctions, but especially subordinating conjunctions as tools to help you guys improve fragments, and to also kind of help add a little bit of sentence variety. We have simple sentences, but when we add subordinating conjunctions, we kind of open up into those complex sentences. So we'll get a little bit more practice with that. All right, last question. Let's see how we do. Sam, look, Sam has come on up. I remember at the top three, she was either alternating between second and third. So Sam is one. We have Malik, Tony, Mercedes is gaining on them. Last question. Let's see how we do. He, she, I, who, us, they, and it are all what part of speech? I'm missing something. Good. All right, good. Overwhelming majority selected pronouns. We kind of talked about that too. How pronouns help us to avoid being repetitive. But, and we see here, so they have the he, she, I, who, us, and they. Those are, who is one of our, what I call interrogative pronouns. They and it. We'll get a little bit more practice on that. But overall, I think you guys did really good on that review. 3 of you guys got 15. Oh, well, Tony got 15 out of 16. So that is, so it's looking like some of them were worth more points than others because, oh my goodness. Sorry, y'all. Sorry, hold on, let me mute. All right, sorry about that, you guys. But my top 3, you guys really did strong the whole time. 15 out of 16 is honorable mention, Tony. I think you ought to be higher than 3. But good job, you guys. So good. If you felt like you were kind of missing some of those questions, what it may be doing is prompting you to review that basic parts of speech handout. Again, whether we go over handouts in a modules or not, you guys are still responsible for that information. So kind of go back, review it, take a look at it, because the instruction we have coming up will depend on at least a basic understanding of the parts of speech. So I made note that the things that I kind of want to really make sure we have specific targeted grammar instruction in is verbs. There's so many variations of verbs. I want us to kind of be familiar with them all and comfortable with them all. So we're going to talk more about verbs. Spend more time practicing verbs. Conjunctions. Conjunctions are my immediate go-to because of the power they have in showing connection or correlation or coordination in our writing. And I want to kind of spend time too on the pronouns, the personal pronouns, possessive pronouns, that they, theirs, etc. So we'll get more practice on that. So good. You guys help me with that. If you don't have the grammar workbook, that's okay. I plan on posting grammar assignments as homework, maybe a sheet or two here or there. If you do have the grammar handout or handbook, it's useful, especially if you're ever stuck on a particular part of speech. It gives you extra instruction. There's chapters dedicated to it in that handbook. But we'll have time in class to go over all of it. All right. So thank you guys for that. Shout out my top scorers. Another thing to keep in mind when we talk about parts of speech, when you guys are reading and you are annotating or jotting down in the margins your definitions, dictionary organizes words, not just alphabetically, but by part of speech. So every word you look up, in addition to the word and the definition, before you get to that definition, they normally will tell you what part of speech it is. And in telling you what part of speech it is, it informs you how that word should be used. If it's a verb, then it's some type of action or state of being. If it's a noun, I know it's a person, place, thing. You know what I mean? So if it's a conjunction, I know it's used to connect or show coordination or correlation between the ideas in a sentence. If it's a preposition, then I know that it shows location or proximity, in the writing. So it helps not only with any grammar exercises or in any type of practice with that, but it helps to know how to use a word, when it's appropriate to use a word. So we're going to get more practice with that this week. I've been holding that Kahoot, look, in the chamber for about 3 weeks. I've been wanting to use it and pull it out, but our discussion on writing has really kind of taken center stage. So as long as you guys are feeling comfortable with your writing, I won't force that. We'll talk about run-ons and fragments on Wednesday. One last thing before we get out of here. Hold on. Let me just check and make sure. Everything as it pertains to the modules. Hold on. So that Kahoot was okay. It was okay. I'll do a little bit more of those, especially as we get into sentence types, to give us a little bit more practice. And it helps me to see what we may not know, to kind of give a little bit more study. But let me pull up another quick document that's in our module to give you guys a little bit of instruction about that before I close out. Hold on. It's a PowerPoint, so they want to act extremely dramatic and slow and opening up. So give me a second. Just thinking about it. Now, one thing we did on Wednesday of last week, just to reiterate, is we quickly or briefly discussed introduction and conclusions. For anyone who took the weekend to work on introductions and conclusions for yourself and still felt like you had a hard time getting started or you had a hard time closing out, use the PowerPoint on introductions and conclusions on, I think it's titled Beginnings and Endings. Use that to help you, again, proofread or finalize your papers before submitting. Let me still not bringing it up. Let me see if I can look at it in the window. All right. I think I clicked on too many things. Oh, here it is. Okay, I was about to get nervous. So you guys see how I'm freezing up? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, just patient. So anyway, I won't, for the sake of not freezing my computer or kicking me out of Zoom altogether, I'm gonna stop this PowerPoint from loading. You guys will have it on your own time to pull up and take a look at. It just itemizes, bullet points, everything we covered in class on Wednesday about intros, opening with a quote. We talked about opening with a quote as a option. Try not to just give some random quote. Make sure it's kind of connecting at some point to what you plan to talk about, maybe your overall main idea. Consider context and background as tools for getting started, as well as summary. So those of you who are writing on topic 1, where you're laying out which article you selected or that motivated you the most and why, it's good practice to summarize that for your audience before going into how it motivated you. So keep that in mind. Conclusions, do not try to rethink, conclusions. They've always traditionally been an opportunity for students to conclude their writing. So you normally conclude by reminding your readers, your audience, of your main idea, addressing key points made in the text, and then lastly, stating why it all matters. So if you kind of adhere to those, what I call template, you kind of stick to that, I think you guys will do okay with conclusions and introductions. But other than that, I didn't have anything else scheduled other than our discussions with the grammar and the paper. So did you guys have any questions for me? We may be able to get out a tad bit early today. No questions about submission. If not, that's perfectly okay. All right. So, okay. Do you want to share it with me, Dominique, or is that what you want to stay after to talk to me about? Okay, so we'll talk about that after. Okay, so if you guys don't have any questions, let me wink, wink, unless we've otherwise talked about, I know I have some students who may be submitting a tad bit late due to either an illness or situations they have going on that we've talked about. Look, if we have not talked about it, then I'm assuming I'm getting your paper today. So make sure you guys are submitting your paper by 11:59 tonight. If you do have a question, please try not to wait until the last minute. So sending me emails at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., the likelihood of them getting answered at that time is unlikely. Also, try not to wait until the last minute to submit your papers, because let's say, for instance, the assignment will be up until 11:59 tonight. Let's say you go in at like 11:57, but the whole process of uploading your document may take, let's say, more than 2 minutes. And by the time it finally uploads, the assignment is no longer there. Try not to wait to the very last minute.
Yeah, I have the question.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to ask you, club book. Are we starting the reading? You have to read 22 pages, right?
You talking about the book club book?
Yeah.
Yes, that is starting this week. We already talked about last week, the reading schedule. So you guys this week should actively be starting your reading schedules.
Okay.
There's 22 pages, I think, was posted as kind of like a weekly breakdown for now. I know 22 pages a week with about 10 weeks or so left. I know that will get us through SULA, but there may be areas where I'll be adjusting the reading schedule for Enrique's journey, because it's slightly longer than the Toni Morrison text. So it'll take more reading in order to finish that by the end of the semester. So for now, 22 pages a week. Yes, you guys should actively be reading that this week. So Wednesday, we're going to have our first discussion board question. And it's not so much about the reading as it is about what to expect from the reading. So just like you guys read and annotate using the strategies we've discussed in class, I want us to use those same reading strategies when we read for enjoyment. So even though this is outside of the unit that we may be working on currently, I still want you guys to approach it the same way you would anything in the class. You annotate, you kind of jot down notes, you make an attempt to follow or understand the information. But there is a way we read literature. We read literature very differently from how we read academic text. Academic text is kind of you searching for the information. I know that this article is designed to teach me something, so I'm reading in anticipation of what this information should be teaching me or telling me. Reading literature is slightly different. Reading literature is almost the act of engaging in art. So just like you can, let's say, look at a painting by a famous artist, we kind of all have our own interpretations. You know, what I see and what you see, it may be different based on our experiences and things that we bring to it. But what you're looking at is a picture. So I want you guys to think of reading literature as slightly different from how we read academic text. You are hopefully enjoying the process of kind of looking around. It's almost as though you are enjoying the journey in terms of literature. You're soaking it all in. I'm reading, I'm paying attention to the scenery, I'm paying attention to the setting, I'm paying attention to the characters and their characteristics. I'm paying attention to the descriptive language, the metaphor. So we're going to talk more on Wednesday too about literary devices such as metaphor, imagery, simile, those things that you will encounter in your book club text. But yeah, good question, Adetunja. This week is all things book club. But I want to get the paper out of the way. So on Wednesday, while you guys do not have to have all 22 pages read by Wednesday, you don't. It's week to week. So this week is 22 pages. If by Monday we're ready to talk about the pages that you guys read, you know, starting this week, that's what, you know, more so what we're doing. So week by week, manage your reading schedule the best you can. I know if I don't get anything done during the week, I binge on Sunday. That's when I would read all 22 pages. If I know I work the weekends and won't have that time, I may do, what is it, about 5 days in a week if I want to keep my weekends to myself. So I can do about four or 5 pages a day to stay on schedule. So you guys are going to have to come up with what works best for you based on your time management and what you have going on. But yeah, the book club book is an expectation that every week we will cover and discuss kind of what's going on. Plan to do that every week on Wednesday. Book club Wednesdays will be kind of our normal activity where we'll kind of check in. Okay. I will have a, if not discussion board, a journal activity attached to the anticipation of the reading assignment. Okay. Is there anybody who's already got started on your reading?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So good. Some of you may not even, you know, you may be able to coast by this week if you got started already. You can just read your annotations or kind of read what notes you made previously. So good. That'll put you in a good place. Other than that, okay, if you guys don't have any immediate concerns or issues, I'm okay with letting you guys kind of leave early, get your break on the back end of class today. The only thing I really had scheduled today was for us to have an exchange about any issues or concerns with your paper, as well as that grammar setup. So that's all I have for you guys today. We'll pick up on Wednesday. Make sure you guys are going through your modules. Anything you can read, even though I may not say right now there's homework. The homework is whatever's in the module. If it's not actually an assignment, it's reading. So just make sure you guys are doing that. And if you don't need me, I'll go ahead and dismiss now. If you guys do need me, if you have any questions, I know Dominique is staying after. But if you guys have any questions, just pause for me a bit after class. Everyone else, I'll see you guys on Wednesday.